All right, welcome everybody to this episode of Going Meta. We are on episode 17, and this episode is going to be about OpenAI and Neo4j and how you can integrate RDF with that. I am subbing in for Alex this week, and yeah, I think I'll hand it over to you, Jesus, and tell us more about this.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks, Max. Yeah, it's different host and different time because normally this should have taken place next week, but both Alex and me were going to be traveling, so you kindly stepped in and we do it
Yeah.
a couple of days earlier, but hopefully equally good. It's going to be an interesting one. So let me, as usual, bring my screen. I share my screen. Let me sure I'm doing it right. So share the whole screen. Hopefully the
I can
whole.
also mention while we're waiting that our developer conference Nodes 2023 is open for CFPs and early registration. So if you want to have a talk about Neo4j or something like that, you can head over to that link down there and sign up.
Excellent. That is definitely great advice, and everyone should be
Yeah,
submitting.
exactly.
Good stuff. So hopefully you can see my screen and well, how we do it, right? We've done this before. I don't know what it was the last one we did, but it's probably close to a year or well, more, less than a year, I believe, ago.
Yeah.
But we open with a couple of slides, really just to introduce the concept of what we're going to try, and we go straight into coding, which is what we normally do in these going metas.
The fun part.
Exactly. So yeah, well, like you said, I mean, today, we couldn't, keep postponing it any longer because everybody's talking about OpenAI, so we had to,
Yeah.
to do our episode on it. So yeah, I mean, the idea is we're going to try to use OpenAI and in particular, well, we're going to show at the beginning ChatGPT, but then we're going to use the OpenAI API to show some more advanced integration. But the idea is pretty simple, right? So we want to accelerate the creation of a knowledge graph in Neo4j by getting data from OpenAI, from the API. And the idea, as we know, is we interact with these API using natural language, right? So our questions
Mhm.
are going to be natural language, but we're going to see what type of answers can we get. Of course, we've all seen it returning amazing, natural language explanations, and but we're going to explore having it return more structured responses, like in the form of things like JSON, Cipher, and we'll eventually get to using RDF and connect that with neo-semantics as well, because we're going to see, and we've talked about RDF in those terms many times here. So RDF is a great vehicle to exchange graph-shaped data, right? It's a very good
Right.
way of. Does that make sense? Is it?
Yeah, yeah, I think that sounds great. I mean, like RDF is this kind of thing that has all these references, and you work with ontologies that are set up to actually give you
Correct.
semantic meaning, right? Just
That's
beyond what the data is actually capturing, right?
that's exactly it. So it's a standard to exchange data. I mean, there's multiple serializations, and you're right. I mean, every statement, because RDF is described in
Mm,
terms of statement or triples, as they call it, subject, predicate, object, and
right.
these statements use unique identifiers called URIs that refer to vocabularies, ontologies that provide additional context and definitions of the concepts that are being described. So that's exactly it, and I thought it would be a good mechanism to exchange information between the API, between the ChatGPT and
Mhm.
Neo4j in this context. And like I was mentioning before, we'll go from there to looking at a more programmatic integration, right? Because
Right.
interestingly, APOC, the extended version, has just released a couple of additional methods that provide integration with these OpenAI API. So that's really cool because in a couple
Yeah.
of lines of code, we're going to be able to generate a natural language request to these API, get some results. And if we get them in RDF, as you know, it's the objective of this session, we should be able to import them directly using Neo Semantics or visualize them again through semantics. But that's the idea. Let's go one step at a time. But that's the outline of the session. So,
I can also mention that these ML functions are now available in Sandbox as well. So if you want to go and try them out there, you can do that as well.
Absolutely. Not only you can do that, I am going to show that is the case. Let me, I'm going to run these in a sandbox. So as we speak, we're going to create an instance and let's leave this one running. And I'm going to bring up my ChatGPT, a new chat. I'm going to put here on the side so that I'm going to try to get the two things running in parallel. So I have the chat here and have my sandbox. Once it's created, it's already here. Perfect. And yes, you're totally right. So I learned that these functions were already deployed in the sandbox. So we're going to see them in action. So we should have that ready now. So we have the user and the password. Let's leave it connecting, and well, let's start with the session. So I'm going to begin with a normal chat first. So before we hit the integration with APOC, let's look at the kind of things that we can ask from ChatGPT. And I'm going to take any random question, and one thing that came to mind. Normally, I prepare this session with some code, but it's interesting because this one is very much natural language, right? So we're going to be presenting prompts, and my plan is literally just a few notes of the kind of questions that I wanted to ask. But let's take a random one. So I was saying, well, what commercial product? A bit slow. I don't know if it's my keyboard. Commercial. Oh, that's my sandbox still starting. We don't need that. This is maybe a bit of a distraction, but let's focus here. Yeah, actually, probably I should go with something a bit split like that, and then we put this one on the other side and like this one. So I was going to say, what commercial product are associated with the tennis player Rafa Nadal? That's and question like any other. So if I ask this question to the chat GPT, I will get a very nice answer in natural language, which is
right.
Great. But what I want to do, like I said at the beginning, is we're going to want to populate a knowledge graph with this information, right? So what I'm going to ask the bot is to can you provide the answer. And we can do it in many different ways, right? So we can, of course, ask it to, well, I don't know, we could, in JSON, like, I mean, you would put it some structure. I don't know what kind of JSON will it generate. But let's let it surprise us. Well, there you go. So we have,
so you can give it kind of system commands to kind of, take your answer and kind of reshape it in different formats.
That is right. So we and now we have kind of a less rich answer, but better structured. So we have something that we could eventually. I mean, why not? I mean, I see the name of Rafa here. So I could say, why don't you? I could ask maybe to produce a cipher to import that JSON into Neo4j. Let's see what that does, and that would be a there you go. So it's telling us that there's a function called JSON, which is totally right. So that would be one way of doing it. So that's great, right? So we could even try that. So this is basically reading the JSON. So it's unwinding and creating actually the player. It's hard coded, but then it's iterating over the keys. I mean, we could even give it a try. Sometimes, it's it's not totally accurate, but let's put it to the test. Why not? So if we take the JSON and we put it in a parameter, let's call it JSON, and we store this, right? So we have this data, and if we take this code now, will it work? So basically what we need to do though is to change it from reading it from a file to reading it from this parameter, right? So instead of, so we need to unwind not value, but we need to unwind, oops, what is it? Is it
JSON, right?
But would it doesn't seem, I don't think that's built for this type of output, is it? Because, you know, it seems to be unwinding on the player, because it's not a collection. So we have like lists of products, so it doesn't depend in player, because there's not a player element here. No, clearly it's not totally polished. But anyway, that's that. Yeah, that's not what I wanted to test anyway. But it's one possibility is to try and have it structured like that. So yeah, it would be great if the two would be in sync. But anyway, so that would be one possible way. But what I was going today is to try and do it in a way that basically I didn't have to face this kind of problem, right? That the format of the input determines very much the code that we have to write to ingest these JSON in particular, because it could have been organized in a different way, right? So we have.
So you want to be a little bit more precise about what you're asking for and such, and you want to be structured about how you're actually doing.
Yeah, because the thing is, I wonder if we could ask the bot to generate an alternative JSON. So basically, the same information could be conveyed in different structures, right? So we here have a root, the Rafa Nadal, and then we'll have a map with the. But it could have been a list, or it could have been a different way of nesting. So and this is in the general case, I suppose, undesirable, right? Because we have to adapt your ingestion code to deal with that. And that's what I was thinking. Maybe you trying to explore the RDF option would be an interesting way. Let's see what it comes up with. So if I say, can you provide the? I mean, actually, let me copy the previous question. I suppose we can go back and say the same, but now actually let's ask it to produce it
directly.
But provide the results in RDF serialize as turtle, because we have multiple serializations. Let's see if what that gets. So hopefully that will produce something that we can read. And okay, so perfect. So as you can see, these are the triples that we were talking about before. So it's telling us that Rafa Nadal is a player. There's a brand called Nike and some others. So it's describing products, and the products have labels, and they're endorsed by Rafa Nadal, so they link to it. So that looks decent. So it's a collection of statements that we could eventually try to ingest. Let's be ambitious and try this time again. If he could, otherwise I can write it myself. But can I ask it to produce a cipher statement to import that? Into Neo4j using Neo semantics or N10s. I don't know if that's how it finding the way to do it. Okay, to import that's looking good. Perfect. So it's I suppose it's just nesting the whole RDF, but inside a call to the method RDF import inline. And that's exactly what I was meaning before. So because RDF is a collection of statements that they themselves form a graph, I don't need to care much about the that's the structure and the kind of graph that I'm producing, because it's already a graph, right? So
you just keep everything in line and just throw it in there, right?
Exactly, and then delegate to Neo4j to process those triples. And let's copy this code, maybe adjust it a little bit. So let's get rid of this JSON, which was not very useful. But if I paste this code, and I don't know if this is being very useful to split the screen like that, but is it readable on your side, Max, or is it too?
Yeah, I think it's all right. I think it's all right.
Right. So basically, as we see, all it's done is, there's a collection of triples here, serialized as RDF, but they're inside this call, N10S Neo4j RDF import inline. Inline is the flavor of the procedure that takes the RDF as payload. So that's exactly what we're doing. But instead of just returning the termination status, I'm going to, because it's a single call, I can run it from here. It's going to complain, because before you can import, as we know, this has happened many times, it's going to ask us to create first a constraint that needs to be added before Neo4j can operate. So I will quite handily, it's part of the error message. So all I need to do is copy this, paste it here, and where is it? Did I know? There you go. So that's the constraint created. And if I run it again, now it's going to complain, because we need a config first. So the first time, actually, let me, because, I'm thinking of this as if I'm of course familiar with the Neo4j plugin and I know what to do next. But what if I said, hey, I wonder if it gets to that. Certainly, that means, oh, brilliant. That's great. Oh, stop it! I don't need to. I don't need to run it. Yeah, basically, it's found exactly what the missing piece. So we need a configuration. We need to initialize it.
Right.
Initialize the graph, and that will be perfectly. And then, of course, continue with the whole input inline, which they needed to repeat. So let's just copy that fragment, which is exactly what we need. Is it letting me copy just a portion of it, or am I being copy? So yeah, that's useful, and probably that removes pressure from me generating the manual, because people can do that and get answers for everything, right? So we don't need to.
Let's skip the docs for next iteration, right?
Exactly. Okay. So well, we can set that up. We can create the configuration. That's done, and finally we can try once more. And actually, before I do imports, let's go ahead and do the import. Why not? Didn't like it. So there was dot in line 49. What was that? So maybe some malformed. Oh, this is it. This escaped quote. I wonder if that could be. Is it some URI that's malformed? I don't know. Let's give it another try. Okay, so that was it. It looks. This is. This is not a problem in general. Is when we run it through the browser, sometimes the escaping of some strings creates trouble, but it's in general it's fine. So it's imported the triples, the collection of triples, and now we have a graph that we can explore in Neo. Look at that.
Oh, wow.
Let's move this a bit to the left. Oh, there you go. We could take a bit more state for this. So look at that. So we have a collection of triples imported. Well, now it's been translated into a property graph, but we have kind of as expected, we have a node representing the player, which we didn't add to it the label, just have the URI. But anyway, that's the node representing Rafa Nadal. And we have a number of things related to it, like, for example, that there's Nike footwear that's endorsed by Rafa. There's Richard Mille luxury meal. I don't know that apparel, but there's a number of products. So that's pretty cool, I would say, because actually, again, it's this idea of using getting ChatGPT in this case to generate
A
RDF.
context we can explore, right? Like we can grab whatever kind of question we want that we want to dig down
Exactly.
to.
Exactly. That's I mean, there's only one thing that I would question here, and it's what happens if I want to, because this is one call to this. Maybe I don't know. I want to combine this with information coming from other sources, and I would like things to merge nicely, right? So if
Right.
I bring additional information about Rafa Nadal, or even about Banco Sabadell, whatever, or any of these items, I want them to link nicely. And if in the RDF world, things are identified with URIs. And if you see by default, what ChatGPT has done is generate random URIs. So it's defined a prefix up here that's called example. And I think it probably adds it to the comment, right? Not here in the previous one where it generated. So sometimes it adds a comment. Here we go. So the player Rafa Nadal. So let's see if it has an additional information. No, it doesn't. But anyway, it's not using any standard serialization. So I was wondering if in the comment it mentions the fact that he's come up with this kind of random URI, but it's not using any kind of standard way of referring to these things, because we could have used, for example, any I'm thinking of DBpedia or Wikidata IDs
Right.
make it simpler.
But you might have to ask for that for it to actually include
Exactly.
that.
So but it looks like by default it comes up with its own terminology, right? Which is great.
Yeah.
And the same with the, I don't know if it's using any specific vocabulary, so just RDF, RDFS. So it's using the these example vocabulary, which is okay because it forms a graph, but it would cause create difficulties if we then want things to integrate nicely by using the same URIs or even using standard vocabulary. So let's exactly do what you said. So I'm going to say, can you regenerate the RDF, but using let's use schema.org. It's a standard vocabulary and Wikidata IDs for resources. That work. Let's see. So it might build something similar, but hopefully, it's still using example. But Wikidata. Right. So that's been useful on the but he's clearly ignored me on the Wikidata thing. So
I think if you ask it from the beginning with a question as well to produce everything, it might be different, because now it thinks that it needs to reiterate whatever you already produced.
There's one thing that has changed. If you see now, the predicates used here are prefixed by schema, which is one of the additional constraints that we added. So let's use these vocabulary terms. But then the thing that it's still not doing is identifying Rafa Nadal. Okay, so you think we can use the same? Like copy the question, but
and just add to the
whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but
I don't know.
Worth a try.
Utilize as turtle using schema.org and identifying both Rafa Nadal and the products with their Wikidata. Did I say Wikipedia? Wikidata.
Yeah.
Wikidata IDs. Okay, let's. Sorry, that's the wrong answer. Let's see if that improved things.
But I also think like ChatGPT, no, it doesn't do that. I think it also has to do with like it tries. Oh, it did.
It did, yeah. So it still has the example, but it's now using the ID. So now that looks like it's a step in the right direction.
But I'm not sure that the IDs would actually be correct, because I know that
okay, we can.
ChatGPT has a way of guesstimating things like that.
Exactly. So yeah, because we have to keep in mind that this is kind of machine learned, right? It's not.
Right.
I mean, I don't. No, I don't. I'm certain. I'm sure that ChatGPT is not loaded with the Wikidata. The Wikidata is a structured source that we can query with Sparkle, which we have done in the past. But it looks like it can generate some, plausible statements. Let's see what they look like. So let me delete the graph. So if I empty. If I empty everything that we've imported, but I kind of re-initialize. Let's keep this time the namespaces, because we're going to be using them. So if I copy this a new fragment of RDF, so let's initialize the graph, and now let's try to import again. So it was call antennas import inline. It's RDF import, I think.
Yeah.
Import inline, and we pass the RDF here, pasting it, and then we say that the serialization is turtle. I wonder if we're still going to have the double quotes issue. Looks like we do. Let's try to find it. Invalid input as expected. So it's a different error. Let's see what that is. Okay, so that's the quote. Yeah, because we're inside single quotes, so if we have any quotes, that's going to break it. But again, this is that's it. So it's the problem of running it in the browser, but it's
yeah.
Okay,
you can escape it and get it to work, but
yeah,
probably,
exactly. With this copy paste this. But anyway, so the graphs should hopefully look pretty much the same. So if we look at it, we still it's changed the coloring, but now we have a bit more annotated things, right? And the difference now, let's make these a bit bigger like we were doing before. So we have Rafa Nadal at the center, and now we have all the predicates. Everything is prefixed by schema SCH, which is the prefix for schema.org. Now, whether these are real predicates in the vocabulary or they have been made up, we'll find out. So we'll see. What you were suggesting, Max, is that maybe these IDs that in theory, it's adamant that they are the ones, they might not be. Well, we have an easy way to find out. So we can actually, if we have Rafa Nadal and we click on this, that should take us to Rafa Nadal's page. And you're right, this is absolutely not Rafa Nadal. It's a building in Lyon. So yeah, clearly not what we were after. So well, anyway, that's interesting. So it's a great observation, because that's let's keep in mind that this is
it's a complete. I mean, it's a completion engine, so it's basically guessing what an ID might look like, and it tries to make its best estimate based on that.
It would be interesting to know if it would be consistent. So for example, if I come and say, for example, let's for example, this Banco Sabadell. So this is one of the things that one of the brands, one of the products, brands in this case, that Nadal is associated with. Maybe he's done some ads. So let me say, can you provide additional facts about Banco Sabadell? I would say again in RDF. And do we have to? It keeps memory. Let's see what it does. I suppose it will provide it in RDF in the same way, and using the same schema. What I'm after, there you go. So it's I'm trying to find if it's going to try to keep consistency, right? Because these might be wrong, right? If I click on Banco Sabadell, maybe it's going to take us somewhere else. But so football club, perfect, yeah. That's. But will it? If I try to enrich my graph with another fragment of RDF, will these IDs be used consistently? It looks like they are, right? This 4680, it keeps Q2 4680. So it looks like it's
oh wow,
it's not totally random, but we can, if I
mean, it's in your context, right? And I think
exactly.
yeah,
But I wonder if I start another chat session, whether that
yeah,
will
it
be
might be different based on how you phrase your question, I guess.
yeah. And I see that there's some quotes here that we might have trouble with. Hopefully there's no more. Let's see. So we are adding these additional bunch of triples, and if everything works fine, now we should have well, the graph growing, right? So, and that's what
Oh
this
wow.
has added now. So yeah, perfect. So if I, so yeah, we have Banco Sabadell, and what it's done is, well, it's added a location, which I don't know why it's not coloring it nicely, but it should. If I do style set, it should hopefully recolor things or make them more consistent. Anyway, no, for some reason it's not. But well, anyway, we can see the content here of the node. So maybe it doesn't have it has a name, but it doesn't have a label. But
Right.
whatever. I mean, but it's linked things nicely, right? So it found that Sabadell is located in Spain in a place called Alicante. It's a member of Spanish Bankers Association. So it's pretty cool.
Oh
So
wow.
it seems to be consistent in the naming of things, which was the objective that we were after. But it's of course the word of caution here is that the one that you notice, which is the use of generated.
I mean, you could probably use some kind of tasking framework like
Yeah.
what's it called, auto GPT or something like that, to make it actually go and look up these things. And
Right. Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing, yeah, because this is what people call hallucinations, right? So it's when it's trying to provide something that's plausible and apparently correct. But if we make a proper scrutiny, we realize that these IDs are actually and yes, that's actually an interesting exercise, right? So for example, because we can parse that, and we're going to do it in integration with APOC, we could
Right.
take these IDs, generate a request to Wikidata, and eventually verify that they are the right thing. I mean, it might be a heavy process, and I mean, the whole thing is kind of questionable in a way, right? Because ultimately, what we're getting is, if we're getting Wikidata fragments, we might as well go directly to Wikidata and run the queries in Sparkle, like we've done in other. But
True.
I guess but the assumption here is, well, first of all, these will be, in theory, I don't know if a superset of what's in Wikidata. And the other thing, of course, the most important is that we're providing a natural language question. So we're asking, give me facts about Banco Sabadell, without having to write the Sparkle and being even aware of that query language. So, but anyway, I think that kind of proves the sort of the first point, right? I'm going to try to maybe bring back the slides that we were using at the beginning, but we've kind of shown how we can run these questions. I mean, not to, in this case it was ChatGPT, but not the API, which we're going to test in a minute. But we've seen how we can have it format the answers in formats that are better structured and that we could eventually consume in a relatively easy and straightforward fashion. And RDF in particular was especially convenient because the combination of neo-semantics made it really easy to ingest. But
you can actually make the graph grow with new questions as well.
Exactly. So that's the whole idea. And what I wanted to take it in the next like 10-ish minutes or so is exploring these new functions, right? In APOC.
Right.
And I guess we can do a quick search. APOC. I don't know if that's going to be a good search. No, that's APOC.
It's probably not indexed by Google yet.
Yeah, it's very recent, isn't it? APOC Neo4j. So if we go to the that would be the documentation. Is this the that's
not the extended, right? Yeah,
okay.
you need the extended version.
Extended. That's the one. And here we go. That's machine learning and OpenAI access. So yeah, for those of you who want to give it a try, you have all the the three methods that are currently implemented. So we have one that generates embeddings. So that's something we're not going to touch on today, but it's a very interesting topic as well. So it takes some text and generates an embedding as a collection of numeric values in forming a vector. Text completion as well, where we pass some text and it will provide an answer. And the one that we're going to be testing today, which is kind of replicating what we've just done, right? So we're going to have a chat completion API where we give the context, might be just some context and a question, and we will have it produce some response for us. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to actually copy this, and let's go straight here. So I'm going to paste that. Let's run a single test on this one. It's going to, of course, complain because I have to define my key. So let me do that.
Should I put your screen off stream for a second?
Privately here, don't worry. I'll
all right.
If you give me just 1 second, I'll take it from could have actually what you said, but okay. So I have my, let's bring it back. So I have my API key, and oops, I think I've lost the, but we can copy it again. So what this is going to do for us, if I it's asking it to, well, you can see actually the way I've done it, and in order to make it easier from here on, let's take the kind of the prompt part and let's make these a parameter as well. So if I run that, it's going to complain because it doesn't have a prompt, but I'm going to define a parameter, which is the prompt, which will contain the value. In this case, it's just the context. So there's a system, which is the context for the way we want the API to behave. I want answers with a single word. And the actual question is, what planets do humans live on? So if I set these as a parameter, I can now come back to my request, which is very simple. So as you can see, it's the APOC ML OpenAI chat, and we pass the prompt and the key that I have set before. And if I run this, it might take a few seconds, but it returns us a structure that contains in the choices section the message, which actually contains the answer, which is the Earth. So pretty cool.
Nice.
So let's try that, but before that, let's prepare it a bit more. So we actually don't want, this is informative and it tells us the model that's being used by default and so on and so forth, but we actually really only want, we could say something like return, we can return the value just for information, but what we really want is value dot choices, right? We said, so this is a JSON structure and we want the choices, and in particular the first one, because I think by default only returns 1, and we get the message, and in the message we get the content. So if I've made no mistake, so it's the value, choices, the first one, message, and content. So if I redo that, it will regenerate the request, and yeah, that's the actual content that we care about.
Right.
Good. So now let's try our thing, right? So and for this I have kind of copied my prompt here, but what I want to do is actually define my own, right? So I'm going to copy it, and it would look something like this, which kind of replicates what we were doing before. So we have some context using the system role, saying provide the answers in RDF, serialize as turtle, using schema.org and Wikidata for resources. And then the actual question, which is which are the brands associated with Rafa Nadal, right? So that's our prompt. We should not expect to get the same results because we're using different model, right? Here by default is using a different one, so probably not. It's not going to be as rich as the other one, but let's see what that looks like. So if I run it, hopefully we will get something, if not identical, similar to what we were getting before. It's taking a bit longer, but ideally that would, here we go, produce.
Oh, wow.
So that's the whole thing. But here I'm just selecting. Oh, that's interesting. That's being quite different actually.
Yeah.
Because it's producing a Sparkle query, which is not really RDF. That's being creative here, or maybe it's it's generating a Sparkle query followed by the answer, but that's not what I want. I want RDF serialized data. So maybe we should adjust the prompt. Maybe we should say something serialized.
You could say like you are. I guess you could say like you are
Triple store or
RDF.
something.
Yeah, you are a triple store that answers only in RDF and something
Okay.
like
Would
that.
that be like I'm not super familiar with that, but should I use the system role for that?
Yeah, exactly. So the system role is basically you can set up different roles for it to interact as. So you can say that it's an assistant or it's a
Triples, but no Sparkle queries. Something
you
like
can
that.
say only respond in RDF or something like that.
So only respond in RDF. Use turtle serialization and using schema.org and Wikidata for use. I don't know. Let's give that another try and see what happens now. Oh, this is setting the prompt, and now I have to call again the actual method that will take that prompt and return the results. That looks better, but yeah, it's a bit less rich than, and I would expect something similar to what we saw before, right? So if we check this is probably not going to be Rafa Nadal. It's Kylie Minogue discography. There you go. So
did you get other choices back or?
I don't think so. Normally, I think by default it returns only the, I don't know, the first, or you can. But anyway, I mean, in this case, what I wanted to show is what the integration would look like. So we understand that it's not perfect, and there would be ways. Actually, it's not perfect. It's far from perfect here. But
I think you have to kind of engineer your prompt to give you back that exact kind of data that you want.
Exactly. So maybe I don't know. Would it be? Should we give some hints like the ID? But then I guess that defeats the purpose, right? If I have to tell him Rafa Nadal's ID is this one, by the way, and then but still the brands that it connects to, it will be still broken. But
I mean, you could do that if you have pre-existing data. Let's say you have a graph, right, in your database that you can pull in that and say, "Hey, I want to know more about this ID" or something like that.
Yeah. That's a good point. So instead of it being a fully natural language question, is like it's driven by my let's say I have some nodes in my graph that are curated and I know that are using the right IDs, and I would say, hey, for this ID, can you provide, representing Rafa Nadal, can you provide me additional facts? And then it would probably enrich it in a more meaningful way. Okay,
right.
So, but the good thing is that the use of schema.org seems to be more consistent. So if I click on that, that should take us hopefully to the definition of the predicate. So that's right. So this is using the right. So the use of vocabulary terms seems to be consistent. So that's good. And
can you perhaps make it so that you get more properties and not just like the
it's hard to tell. I mean, but anyway, well, let's look at what this integration could look like. But that's so we're seeing that this is actually returning us a collection of triples, and when we get a collection of triples, I mean, we can instead of returning it, we can say with these as RDF payload, let's call it. we can now call, as we were saying before, I can call my Neo-semantics RDF import RDF in. Why is it not completing nicely? And 10s RDF import. Well, anyway, inline, and we would pass this RDF payload,
Right.
indicating that it comes in turtle format, right? So that's the realization. Actually, if instead of importing it, I'm doing a preview, that should be good enough. And that would show, without writing to the database, it would return the nodes and relationships that it produces, and we can return everything, right? Like this, we get the whole context, we get the value, we get the RDF that we're getting, and we can debug if it doesn't make sense or if it doesn't do what we expect it to. But basically, here's where we are chaining in. Of course, there's some wrong. What is it complaining about? Is column but found a comma. Who know? The problem is because it's thrown an exception, we can't tell if this is. Should we expect it to be consistent? I mean, it's the fact that it has produced this before. If we run it again, it might be. Yeah, so yeah, I guess what we're learning from this session is that it's still far from being in a place where we can use it to really. I mean, it does a number of things. Oh, look at that! It's now producing something different, including actual natural language. So
Right.
okay. So
I think like with the API, usually you can set like parameters that kind of gauge how much it should like the tolerance, or like how much it should guess and not guess, or stuff like that.
Right. Okay, but look at that, because now the thing is, we said that it could only return, in theory, RDF, and it seems to be adding this context where it's kind of explaining. I mean,
right.
We could eventually, but I guess
you can tell it to not return anything else.
But I think that's what we put. Is that not what we? Because we said you
but
respond in RDF
and do not respond with anything else.
That's an RDF. Yeah. So if we try this and again. But I suppose here we're in kind of prompt engineering territory, right? Where we have to kind of fit it until it returns exactly. There you go. So it's a bit more like what we were getting before. But I'm tempted to run it one more time because that's what we got before. But this time, I guess this is never going to be consistent because it's not. There you go. So that's.
I don't know, but it depends on, I think, the tolerance that you have. Like you can, or maybe it's temperature. I don't remember if it's temperature or tolerance.
But even because even the like that is here is generating associated with statements, whereas here is generating brand statements. And then the IDs they're entirely different, right? So
I think you have to kind of give. I mean, if you were to do the system command, you can engineer that a lot more. Like you can tell it, like, and give it examples how you want it to kind of output. So you can give it like 2 or 3 examples, and then say like.
Right. Okay. I see. So there's more work to be done, and still doesn't like it. So I don't know if what flavor of it's returning. But in theory, if we were sure that I was being a bit optimistic on how consistent or how predictable the RDF being generated. Oh, and that's still different again. But this looks like something that Neo-semantics should have been able to process. I wonder if of course we don't know because it's throwing an exception. But if we did a NTNS RDF preview inline and we paste it and with a turtle serialization, not liking it. So there's illegal carriage return. It's interesting.
Maybe you have like
Oh, I have the quote here. No, that makes sense because it was my fault not removing the quotes here. Is that it? There you go. So now it's better. So if it was that, so it has what Rafa. Well, I suppose something that would have been Rafa, but probably will not be because again, this is in somewhere in Ireland, so not Rafa Nadal. But yeah, the same idea. So yeah. So some clear prompt engineering to be done here, but once we get that right, I mean, we should be able to chain the as we were seeing here, the generation of the RDF directly from the API, and then the input of the same RDF, or at least the preview of the same RDF in in basically 2 lines of cipher. But well, that was
it's
of wishful thinking, so I have to be doing more. I was honest, I was curious about, because there's been a lot of discussion and comments on how the two, how close the two are, how close the two should be, and I was thinking maybe it would be worth exploring how easy it is effectively to bring data from these API or from the ChatGPT directly into Neo. And I guess, well, we've got a taste of it.
I think if you add lookups and stuff like that, when you can stop it from doing like hallucinations and stuff like that, and have like system prompts that are
I guess
gives you the rules of like it has to follow, like it has to be a complete complete RDF statement. Then,
exactly. So some validations here, like well, first make sure that we get it to consistently produce just RDF and not text descriptions, which that seems to be okay.
Maybe do some escaping or something like that.
And then some like you say, some validation of the URIs being used, especially if you want to use standards like the Wikidata ones. And then eventually, if those validations pass, then you would be in a position to ingest it. But well, that's what we had for today. Let me stop sharing, and maybe I don't know if I had any questions from the attendees. If not, we can probably let me stop screen and bring it here. And
I think we have one question. I can put it up on screen here, but I'm not sure.
Okay. No, it's a relationship. Oh wow, well that seems to be an unrelated thing, right? Because this is about importing the data. So yes, I mean you can. But
other than that, I don't think we have much more questions.
Okay.
Today.
So there's there you go. There's another one there on generating Sparkle queries with OpenAI and use that to query Wikidata would be cool. That's a great one. But I'm tempted to think, and why let's use 2 more minutes to test that quickly.
Yeah, sure.
In the same way, it's managed to let me present again. Why not?
I mean, you could, so the it would be like you would ask it to make a Wikidata or a Sparkle query.
Exactly.
And
a Sparkle. Can you see my screen again?
Yep.
So do I still have my? I should have my. Here we go. That's my chat. So if I instead of I can hide that. Instead of asking it to produce RDF, can you generate a Sparkle query for
or just to answer this question or something like that?
Get the I don't know, we said the brands, the products. Excuse me. The commercial.
I think you could just ask like to answer this question and then give it a question.
Rafa Nadal.
Yeah.
Let's try this one and see what it comes up with. Spark query, good, that's promising, but here we go. So that's okay. So here it's using another ID for Rafa Nadal. Hopefully that's the right one. And then it's well,
I would guess that the IDs are hallucinated here as well, but
I would not be surprised if that's the case. But there's only one way to find out, right?
Yeah.
So if we go to Wikidata and we paste that query as it is. So this thing, this is not Rafa Nadal, unfortunately. So it's really not. And this is a national library in Spain. That's So the IDs seem to be. It's interesting because it seems to be decent at the predicates. Like, for example, it understands is looking for a hierarchy, for instance of, so class of, but then it gets it completely wrong when it looks at things like products or individuals. Like, so I would not be surprised if this does not return any answers, because that's so very very good question. But it looks like, again, it suffers from the same type of problem, right? So it still doesn't seem to be aware of these.
Are you able to anchor these queries maybe in some way without the IDs? Like maybe look for a name or something like that, or do they have it to be anchored?
No, it could be. I mean, can you? I would say, let's search by name instead of by ID. I suppose the performance would be as good, but still, that's a good idea. So let's copy this code. So we copied it, and if I come here and so this is looking for a person with that name, and
right.
But again, it's using a bad predicate, so that's never going to work. So let me comment that out. So if I comment that and I say that if we get rid of all that, we could but it's already changing quite a bit, to be honest. If I run that, it doesn't find it. So Rafa Nadal, it's probably not the label. So it's not even finding a thing that has that as label. So maybe that would be the name, or you would use a different, maybe Rafael Nadal. Any chance? There you go. So maybe this guy is him. That's it. So yeah, it can be done, as you can see, Max, but it's still not generating something. So great question and great idea, but it looks like still, again, suffering from the same type of limitation, I guess, in this context. But
I think it needs to kind of validate that data in some sense if you want to pull it in and have it be like specific with the right IDs and all of that.
Yeah. Cool. Anyway, that was an interesting one.
I think it was really interesting, and it's good to see that like you're able to actually make these queries as well in the database. That's
right.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay. Well, thank you then, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
Today. Thanks, Max, for sending in this time.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Cheers. Have a great evening, everyone.